மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
We're now in Switzerland. We move about a bit on these DVDs, even though I don't seem to rise from my chair. And it's 1992. This is a game versus Milosevic and Babarin. It's going to feature a system which I think could crop up quite a lot at club level. Okay, E5, knight D5, and D4 was played, D6. Bishop comes out to C4. Tricky system, and one which you've got to know well. Actually, just going back, I should, as an aside, mention the move 3G3, which I haven't mentioned already. I think this is a move which Rosenthaler has been pioneering against various black systems. One can even do this against the Alekhine. I'll just mention a fragment from the game Dovliatov versus Mamedjarov, a very talented youngster who's, well, youngster, he's top grandmaster, of course, which is who has recently embraced the Alekhine himself, and show you what black should do against it. Just show you Mamedjarov's response. This game comes from a game he played in Baku in 2006. E takes d6. Now I think queen takes d6 is a good move. Bishop g2, knight c6. Dovliatov played knight c3. Black took on c3 and then played g6. I think this is a pretty respectable way for black to play against this particular system. Once again, white is perhaps hoping to get some sort of initiative with rook b1 there, some sort of attack down the queenside open file there, or some sort of attack against c7. But just observe the course of this game. Knight f3 was played. Both sides castled. d4, and now Mamedjarov struck out with e5. D takes e5, and now the queen came to c5, and already I think black's got a pretty good position. The continuation, rook b1, queen takes c3, bishop f4, rook d8, queen c1, b6 does not inspire me to play this variation as white. So I think this is one decent way, just one decent way for black to get a pretty good position against an early g3. Which brings us back to our tricky system with bishop c4. Then I think knight b6 is a good move. Bishop b3, and black takes on e5. After which white executes his idea by going queen h5. I know this is favoured by a lot of players under the grade of 2300. They're hoping to catch their opponent out. He won't know anything about this. I'll show you what I think black should do. Well, he should certainly parry the threat of checkmate. D takes e5, and now pawn to a5. I think this is a good move. And the idea is that when white stops black playing a4, black gets to play his knight to a6, knight to f3, and then knight to c5. And this is basically a very reliable way of blunting this aggressive system. The bishop on b3 or bishop on a2 is biting on granite, and black could perhaps even focus on the a4 pawn. That pawn could well turn out to be weak. So let's see how play develops out of this particular idea. Alright, well, Milosevic retained his bishop with bishop a2. And now black plays another good move here, bishop d7, intending not only to take the pawn there, but maybe even bishop c6. Okay, well now white has a number of options. In the game Magrini versus Murgia, played in an Italian Open tournament in 2004, white played the ridiculous looking move b3. I mean, to my eye, that move is an absolute joke. If that's the best white's got in this system, then forget it. Black quickly built up a very comfortable game here by playing bishop c6. Knight bd2 was played. Knight comes to d5, eyeing perhaps 2 weak squares in white's camp. White castled. Black sent the queen backwards. He brought his knight to c3. Pawn went up to h5, and then a rather humorous move. Knight takes a2. You wouldn't believe the knight should take off that bishop, but turns out that Murgia is just you know, he's actually transforming one advantage into another by playing queen to d5. And after queen takes d5, bishop takes c5, it's quite obvious that black has won the battle of the opening. Only black can be better here. And in fact, he went on to win in 53 moves, actually. So going back to bishop d7, it's obvious that that b3 is quite ridiculous here. So castles is another move, and this has been played many times. Against that, bishop takes a4 can be played. In the game Kinderman versus Falk, Germany 1977, white tried knight a3. Bishop comes back to c6. Bishop comes out to f4. Bishop went into d4. White played rook a d1. And black was able to play knight d5 in this position. Knight comes to g5, about time. Bishop came back to g6. Queen went to e2, bishop e7, excellent move. Knight comes back to f3. Queen to c8, and once again we see that black has negotiated the opening problems. In fact, white took back the pawn, which he lost earlier, but after castles it was pretty clear that black was doing fine in this position. With two bishops, e6 square, lovely light square bishop. Black is absolutely fine. So finally, we rejoin the game Milosevic versus Babarin, and white chose knight c3 instead of b3 or castles. Okay, well against that, black was brave. He took the a pawn. If there's an Achilles heel in this variation for white, apart from losing battles of tactics, it must be the a4 pawn. So knight takes a4 was played, and now Milosevic went in for the kill with knight g5, which, you know, he could have done, white could have done in some of the other lines. Black response would still have been the same. Queen to e7. And of course, what white is hoping for is that the queen on e7 is uncomfortably placed. Okay, let's see. White took on a4. Black took back with the bishop. Bishop comes to e3. And now pawn comes up to g6. Queen goes back to e2, and now a characteristic position for the light square bishop in this line. Babarin retreats his bishop to c6, and what a strong square that is. Obviously keeping an eye on white's king side, but most importantly keeping an eye on white's knight on g5. You know, black wouldn't really want that knight appearing on e4 and then f6. So bishop c6 essentially says to white, well, prove it. I've taken a pawn. There's no reason why you should be getting any sort of winning attack here. In general, black has employed what I would call almost a refutation of this tricky line when he plays in this manner. Milosevic castled. Knight came back to d7 now that e4 is covered. f4 was played, and bishop g7. So a comfortable deployment for the bishop. The queen on e7 was only optically uncomfortable. It was easy for black to find a square for this bishop. And now, as we've seen in many Alekhine lines, white's attack is running out. He figures in order to add fresh fuel to the fire, he's got to sacrifice something. But black just takes it. Queen comes to h5. Okay, well, at least white has a threat here. He's threatening to take on e6. Black instantly stops that move. And now rook takes f5. Again, a desperate looking move. But, well, if white doesn't do something drastic like this, then he's just going to lose the game on material. So let's just see what happened. Because interestingly, Babarin decided to take that. And white now played rook d1. It's hard to believe this. Going back, rook takes f5, e takes f5. Well, I suppose he could go bishop takes f7 check. But then surely the black king runs away, doesn't he? I don't see what white is doing in this position. The black king is just going to run all the way to the queen side, and white will find himself a rook down. So with that move denied, white tries to cut the king off. But, well, Babarin just played very coolly here. Knight g6. Bishop takes on f7 check. King f8, bishop a2. Some threats now of knight e6 check. But again, a remarkably cool move here by black. Bishop takes e5. King h1. Well, now it really is getting difficult to believe white's attack. Bishop comes back to d6. Queen h6 check. King e8. Bishop f7 check. King d8. Bishop takes g6. And now, typical Babarin, he seizes the chance to counterattack by taking on g6, allowing white to take on h8. But now king g7 is the interesting kickback here. Okay, well, let's see what happens if queen takes a8. Queen takes e3. We've got a typical type of position where white has won the exchange, but he finds himself perilously close to losing by virtue of a direct attack here. I mean, in fact, what is white to play in this position? That knight is in terrible trouble. Black's got threats like bishop takes g2 check here. He's on the knight. Maybe queen e2 is a possibility. Maybe queen e5 is a possibility. In short, queen takes a8 leads to a winning attack for black. So after king d7, white played queen d4. Then came rook e8. Rook comes up to d3. King goes back to c8. Knight h3. And now queen e4. An excellent move. White must trade in view of the mate threat. Bishop takes. Rook comes to c3 to defend c2. Bishop comes out to b4 to harass the rook. And sadly for white, that move actually spells virtually the end of the game, because, well, there was only one more move, rook c4, and then bishop d5. And suddenly white found he had two pieces on pre. And, well, he had to resign. So this variation, what can we say after bishop c4? It's tricky. It's dangerous. A lot of players will try it, but I believe with careful defence, starting with a5, bringing the knight to c5, and the bishop to the light squares on the long diagonal, black can beat this attack back. And in view of the weakness of white's a-pawn, well, he may well go on to score a quick win, black. I don't believe this line for white at all.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.